Our whole learning night tonight is about using textures, creating them and using them in your images and seeing the impact they can have. So I think you all know that I'm Moira, and this tutorial is a supplement to tonight's hand-on learning. I know a lot of you have had a little stroll amongst the tables behind us. We're going to cover how to paint your own textures using inexpensive supplies from the dollar store to use in backdrops and various types of your photography. We have Marion willing to share her secrets on how to pose and style floral and still life images using physical backdrops. And then we end our session with taking a few images, including our backdrops. We'll learn how to use the backdrop photographs as digital textures in Photoshop. So when would you use a digital texture? If you've got a very plain background, you might have taken a flower picture, maybe it's on a white background or just something of little interest. You might want to jazz it up and add a texture. You could neutralize a very busy background. Lots of times in gardens, it's a jumble behind a beautiful rose you found somewhere. Maybe you just want to take your picture to the next step and add a painterly look, or just to make your subject pop or change the mood. How to choose a texture, just a few tips here. It's really a personal choice. Everybody has different color preferences. You know, I think it's great to avoid strong lines. They don't really seem to work. You don't want the texture to take over from the subject of your image. You want it to complement it. You can choose a color from your subject or a complementary color. If you don't want to alter the background color, you can also use a black and white texture just to add some interest. So I'm going to share some of my images to show how a texture can impact your image and sometimes actually give it a new life. Lots of times you take a picture of a good subject and you got the subject very well, and but the background you was out of your control. Anyway, I tried here to show the straight out of camera images along with the image with the texture applied. And there's various different ways, which we're going to cover in a couple of short Photoshop videos of how they were applied. So here's our first image. This was taken at our August outing that Marion arranged for us. There was a bunch of horse trials and we got to go. And there's nothing wrong with this image. I don't know about the Eeyore kind of adds or takes away depending on your taste, I suppose. But I took that picture and I added 2 sky images as textures to it and came up with this just for something with a totally different look. Here's an image I got at my niece's farm and half of my husband's head there, and the horse was where the horse was, and that's all we had. And so I added 1 texture and cropped the picture. This was taken in a very busy garden in Denver, and a friend was hand holding the texture and not very straight by the looks of things. And but that was a printed texture held behind the flower. And I just cropped that and took the distraction away from the upper left corner, and you have a more polished image. This again was a flower with a printed background held behind it. Here, this was at our outing at August and Bob's farm, and one of my textures that's here tonight was used behind this, and some of the beets from Cheryl's garden at the farm. And this is the same background used in a portrait, just to show, you know, they're not only for flowers or only for still life. They can be used in lots of things, depending, of course, if you're using it as a physical backdrop, how big it is, or if you take a picture of your physical backdrops, you can apply them digitally. Here we have another type of texture. I had made this out of a piece of plywood and used drywall compound with a decal pattern on the top. And I just applied it on top of this other textured background and masked it off to let the alcove show through. Here we have, you know, when you get asked to take pictures of grandchildren and there's just limited space in the house and there's always some distractions, But the main attraction is the babies, so you want to do the best you can to get a picture of them. So I just used a texture I had made out of my garden and added a color through Select Color in Photoshop from one of the girls' outfits and painted it in loosely just to hide all the background and bring the attention to them. So that's just a few samples just to show you ways you can use a texture. Here we have a straight out of camera image of a blue Himalayan poppy taken at Longwood Gardens. This is the exact time of year where they're displayed at the gardens and people travel from far, like from Oshawa to just outside of Philadelphia to get a blue Himalayan poppy. And it's very crowded and, you know, people are trying to use tripods and you're trying to get the best flower in the garden. It's not always very easy. And you can see the background's quite distracting here. So it was also 2013, which my photography skills were rudimentary at best. And I just tried to get the flower as well as I could. And since learning about textures and different things, I thought I would try to make an image out of this. So here is my, okay. Welcome everyone, my name is Moira Fenner and I will be talking about how to use textures with your images tonight. Like most things in Photoshop, there are several methods to reach the same end. I am sharing with you how I use textures. We will start with my straight out of camera image of a blue Himalayan poppy. I like to do my basic edits in Lightroom and follow my typical workflow in the Develop module to correct exposure, reduce digital noise if needed, and add a little sharpening. I would then take the image to Photoshop for editing. I would crop the image first, often choosing the 4x5 preset. As you can see, the image needs some breathing space on the right edge of the frame. I'm going to address that later once the flower has been selected and the texture applied. The first step involves selecting your subject before applying a texture. With the flower image layer selected, go to the Quick Selection tool on the toolbar and choose the Select Subject option. If you go down this down arrow, make sure the cloud is selected. You typically get a better selection using that. Back to the Select Subject button and hit that and let the computer do its job here. And we can see that we have the marching ants around our selection. Now I would like to make a couple of amendments to this, and I'll just start here. You can see with this polygonal lasso tool, there's a small plus sign there. That means anything you select now would be added to your selection. And there is a button to subtract from the selection, or a quick way is just to hit the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC. And then I'm just going to move that in small increments is, I find, the easiest way to not have it go a little haywire on you. And just outline the part that you want to not be included. You want to subtract it from the selection the computer has made. There we go. I've just zoomed in, to the image so I can see it a little better. And also we're going to take out these things. So again, the Option key on the Mac, Alt key on the PC, and outline the parts you do not want to include. Hit the Enter key. And again, let's take this little leaf out here off, and the bit of the leaf that's between these two stems. There we go. That looks a little wonky there. Just fix that up a little neater. There we go. So now we have, well, back where we can see our full image, we have everything we want. We're going to go to the Select and Mask option. And you can see the red area is areas that are not selected and will not be included in the image. There are some refinements here you can use, and we're not going to get into that in this particular exercise. What we want to do now is to output this back to our image in Photoshop, And here's the button here, output to, and we'll keep it at the layer mask. And we'll hit OK. So now we have, you see, we have a mask beside our image. Small everything is, it looks big at home. The first step involves selecting your subject before applying a texture. With the flower image layer selected, go to the Quick Selection tool on the toolbar. We are now ready to add our texture. Let's go to File, Place Embedded, find the texture we want to use. Here we go. Now my texture is in a landscape format and we have a portrait format for our flower images. So we just need to hover over one of the corners of the image until you get this rounded arrow and turn that. We need to get to 90 degrees in order for this to be straight. Then with our cursor on the texture, we'll just pull it out to the corners. I like to give a little bit of overlap here, just so that you don't come up shy at the end. So now with our texture place, we'll just hit return. And all we can see is our texture. We just need to select that layer and drag it down under our cutout layer. And there we have our image. So of course, as we mentioned earlier, we're a little very tight actually on the right-hand corner. So we just need to choose the Move tool, be on the layer that has the cutout, and just go over the flowers and pull them over. I just put it just like a little bit off center. And this image is now complete. We have our petals and blooms that we chose from our original image. We have a pretty background and the image is complete. So this is a tulip image taken at home on my light pad. It was intentionally taken as a high key image, of course, on the light pad. So I just adjusted the exposure to bring back some more detail. The background was white, so I wanted to add some interest, change the look of the image. I decided to add a texture. So let's have a look at this. I got to tell you guys, thank God for Kathy. Let's have a quick look at that process again with another flower. We have a white and pink tulip image edited with basic adjustments in Lightroom. With the flower image layer selected, let's go to the Quick Selection tool, select Subject, remember, check that Cloud is selected, and hit the Select Subject button. And we should be seeing the marching ants come along our selection. It's always important to have a good look, especially when you have areas like these, and if it's a more intricate flower, they don't always get them all. Anyway, it looks pretty good now. We can go directly to the Select and Mask tool. This is another opportunity to see if we need to make any adjustments to the selection, but it's all looking good. So we will again go to the output to a layer mask. And here we go, we have our layer mask. I'm now ready to select a texture from my files. We'll go again to File, Place Embedded, and select that texture. Hit Place. Looks like it's lined up good for us. We'll just hit the return button and we'll drag this down under our layer. Now, while I really like this painted texture, it doesn't really enhance the flower. The flower seems brighter and a cooler image, and the texture is quite warm. This mix can often work, but I don't feel it works here. So what I've decided to do is to add a hue and saturation layer from the adjustment layers. Now I only want it to affect this texture in the event, or this layer, in the event that I might add some other ones. So with selecting on the hue and saturation layer, just do a right click and look for the Create Clipping Mask. You'll see this little arrow here pointing down to the texture, and all that means is it's only going to affect that layer. So then what we can do is go up here to our hue saturation layer, and remember, eyes on the texture, that's what we're trying to change, and we just play with that till we see, that looks not too bad, but that's just the green. And just see what kind of colors what we can get here. And we can go all the other end as well into the pinks. I like the pinks. I'm all of a sudden liking things along the same tone. It is a little intense, a little bright, so we can pull the saturation down lower. There, I like that look myself. Maybe a little lightness, so that's darkening it, lighten it up a little bit. And I think that works very well. So if you're liking a texture that you make like that, you can just merge these two layers here. And you can save this. So merge those layers and then do a file, save a copy, and save that pink texture. Like we can see it without the file here. We could save that to our files to use in the future. That's how you get a big inventory of your textures. It works very well. And now we're going to start talking about blend modes. So blend modes in Photoshop dictate how a layer's pixels interact and combine with the pixels of layers beneath it based on brightness, color, or contrast. I know when I hear that, I say, what? What does that mean? We're going to see what it means shortly. Blend modes are located in the Layers panel. You'll normally see that word normal there. There are 27 blend modes which enable non-destructive creative effects. Main categories are normal, that's where it stays, and that's the default setting. There's no blending involved. Darken, there are 5 modes which retain the darker areas and remove the whites. And the opposite for lighten, there are 5 modes again which retain the lighter areas, removing the blacks. In contrast, there are 7 modes which increase contrast by darkening shadows and lightening highlights. And don't worry about remembering all of this. It's really just quite fun actually to go down the list and just try them all till you find something that you like the look of. A few tips. The most commonly used blend modes are multiply, overlay, and soft light. But please go down. You never know what something can give you on a particular texture. You can hover your cursor over the various blend modes on the drop-down menu for a preview. While your image is up, just go down with the arrow and you can get a quick look at what it's going to look like. There's also an opacity and fill sliders. The opacity reduces the visibility of the entire layer. You'll soon see the transparency, the checkerboard layer peeking through, while the fill just reduces the effect of the blend mode but keeps the layer styles visible. Screen is quite handy and commonly used to remove black backgrounds from images, and multiply is used to remove white backgrounds. So we're going to start working with multiple textures and blend modes. Whether you're creating a texture, you're just sitting down, you saw something when you were out, took some pictures, you're going to create a texture from it, or you're adding a texture to one of your images, you can use multiple textures. This is where the fun and creativity really begins. So we're going to take a look at another Photoshop demo showing us how we can create a new texture from our existing textures using blend modes. Let's start playing with multiple texture files. We'll look at creating new textures from our existing textures. I'm going to use 2 of my textures, a hand-painted brown texture, which you'll see here, and a green and light brown marbled texture. This is something I saw and photographed somewhere. I'm going to go through the blend modes looking for results I like. If I do get something I like and it's a bit intense, I can always lower the fill or the opacity. So one of the very popular blend modes to use is multiply. I really like this. This is a great kind of dark image that would go well with a portrait, but it is a bit dark for sure. So I think I will look at lowering the fill level and see what happens there. You can see it getting a bit lighter. Yeah, I'm really liking the look of this. I think I could use that a fair bit. It would be a great still life background. I think that's all there is to it. Then I could just merge these 2 layers and save that as a file copy. So I would just merge these 2. Merge layers and file, save a copy, and save this as a new texture. Our next demo uses two hand-painted textures like we created tonight, adding a blend mode to create a new texture. At this point, you can go to File, Save a Copy, and save the new texture to your files. It's really important if you're going to start collecting textures and making them to get some sort of organization going, or it can be very hard to know what you've got. I tend to try and do it by the material, like if they're stone or rock creations, if they're painted, wood, etc., or whatever makes sense to you that you would know where to go to find things. So then I'm also going to add another texture to the image and play with the blend modes again and hopefully come up with yet another texture to save to the collection. Let's have another play with multiple textures. This is a hand-painted texture that I was disappointed with. I didn't think it worked well as a backdrop behind flowers. However, I'm going to give it a go with some other textures and blend modes. So I am going to open up this green texture and File, Place Embedded, and move it onto the top. And we will play with the blend modes and see what we can get here. So just going down through the darkened ones. I really like that. Quite nice autumn colors. Not work, not work. Just really looks like the top one. These take all the dark colors out, this lightened portion. Overlay. It's a bit much for me. Soft light. That one's nice as well. I like that. Vivid light. Ooh, linear light. Just giving you a chance to see some of the things you can get. I've heard a number of people say these are like being on a psychedelic trip, some of these ones down at the bottom here. You know, there is a nice light green there. However, I think I like the multiply mode one, and I would just probably knock the fill down a little bit, not too much though. And I think that would be a great texture to use. So we can carry on and add another texture on top of this one and see what we can do. So again, File, Place Embedded, and we're going to pick this blue-green one and put it on the top. And again, play with the blend modes. See what we can get. Not too much difference. That's a nice green. If we lighten that up, be a nice dark texture. Linear burn, darker color. That kind of looks like the last one we had. Don't like, that one's nice. Color dodge. I bet if we knocked the fill back a bit, that might look quite nice. Yeah, I would definitely save that as one. Let's keep going. See what else we can get. Overlay. All those little marks on the texture, I don't care for that. This is taking them out. Yeah, I like that a lot. That one would work very well. So I would save those last two ones, and then we would have, I think it's 3 separate textures that we could do a file, save a copy, and add these to our bank of textures as well. This is an image of a sweet pea from my garden. I like the image as it is. The background is out of focus grass, which is always a great background if you're outside when you can see the grass, not like these days. But just for fun and to create a more painterly image, I'm going to add several textures. Let's have a look at our last Photoshop demo. We're now going to play with multiple textures on this sweet pea image. The green background is nice as it is. I like it very much. I'm just looking to do something a little more painterly. The background is out of focus grass, which always serves as a good background. Anyway, let's go ahead and select the image as we've done a few times now. So with the selection tool and cloud selected, we're going to hit select subject and let the computer select this. Here we go. Have a look around, make sure there's nothing amiss, and we'll hit select and mask. Looking good. Again, over to the panel here and output to layer mask. We'll hit OK. Now we have our layer mask and we can start adding our textures. So we will go File, place embedded, and use our first texture. It's a small file, so we'll need to stretch that out. Make sure we hit all the corners and hit return. Let's drag it under the selection layer. I quite like the image as it is just with this texture. It just is one of my favorite textures, to be honest. But we're going to add a second texture. File, place embedded, and we're going to pick this floral watercolor texture. It's looking good there. And we will start playing with the blend modes on the watercolor one. You can see some of the bottom texture starting to come in. I like this multiply. Let's just look. Whoa. See what we like. The lightened ones typically won't do well with these light textures. Overlay's not too bad, and soft light's quite nice. I think we'll go back up to multiply, and we're going to take the fill layer and put it down till we get how much we like of the bottom layer just showing through some of those bokeh images. I think that's quite nice, shows all the colors. And that is that. That's our new image all complete. I'd really like to take a minute just to say that I hope you've enjoyed hearing about textures tonight and getting a little hands-on shooting and some setups so you can do these types of things at home. I hope the information will be useful to you, and I do hope that you will try it out at home and have some fun creating your own textures. Again, thanks very much.